collapse on itself as wars stretch across multiple fronts and Israeli security overstretched is the question. A surprise audit by the Directorate General of Civil Aviation has exposed serious safety lapses across Indian airports and airlines. We decode the issue in on point 3. And in on point 4, we tell you how Iran continues to have an upper hand on the Strait of Hormuz. Nepal's scripted history when a 35-year-old outsider Balen Shah took oath as the Prime Minister of Nepal. He is in office because of the GenZRevolution that upended the old order. The street protests shunted out older parties and multiple former Prime Ministers. Nepal, like Sri Lanka, restored the democratic order. Dressed in his signature modern meet traditional style, Balen Shah pledged loyalty to the constitution and the people, marking the rise of a leader born out of protest and blending Hindu and Buddhist traditions as a reminder of Nepal's multi-religious and multi-ethnic cultural identity. This was not just a swearing in, this was a generational takeover. The world is watching this political disruption closely and messages are pouring in for Nepal's youngest Prime Minister. India was among the first to respond with Narendra Modi congratulating Balen Shah and signalling continuity in ties. The spotlight is now firmly on Balen Shah, but the road ahead is anything but easy. He takes charge of a nation battling a crippling job crisis, where nearly 1,500 people are leaving the country every single day in search of work. Poverty remains widespread, corruption is deeply entrenched, and political instability has defined Nepal for decades. But that's not all Balen Shah must also navigate. He also has to do a delicate geopolitical tightrope balancing between China and perhaps the toughest challenge of all would be delivering quick, visible results, because the same Gen Z wave that brought him to power may not wait forever. Now to the big questions. What does rise of Balen Shah tell us about Nepal's politics? Can a 35-year-old outsider run a fragile nation? What happens to old parties and senior politicians? Why was Gen Z so upset with the old order? Nepal almost avoided anarchy. What made people restore democratic order? And lastly, why Nepal did not go the Bangladesh way? On this issue, I am joined by Ambassador S.T. Muni and Varun Chaudhary, MD and CEO, GC Core Global. Thank you both of you for joining me. Let me first go to Ambassador Muni. Sir, my first question to you is, what do we make of the momentous day which we have witnessed, where Balen Shah, a 35-year-old, an outsider to the politics, traditional politics, has taken oaths in Nepal, sir?
Well, this is a new Nepal, let us say, to begin with. It is a Nepal which seems to be or promising to be more stable than what the previous governments have been there. This is a leadership which is committed to people and doing good for people, at least on 2 or 3 counts. Those 3 counts to my mind is: 1, removing corruption; secondly, giving good governance; and thirdly, ensuring an equitable developmental delivery. I think these are the 3 most critical questions on which this government has won, and people are hoping. The greatest pressure on this government is of the people and their expectations. But the internal situation, internal dynamics raises some questions. We all need to be hopeful, but we must also keep our eyes on those questions. Number 1, Balen was not the part of the Rashtriya Swatantra Party, which is the organizational section of the present government. Balen came as more of a popular leader all by himself, and he was of course supported by Gen Z, and he led the Gen Z mobilization in a big way. So there is a certain element of a tension between an organized party and a person who came from outside and became a prime minister. That is number 1 problem. Secondly, I have a feeling that this government and most of the ministers and even the Gen Z government has close links with the Western NGOs, and there is an element of Western political acculturation, if I don't want to be very strong. which India has not dealt with. India has unfortunately or fortunately been dealing more with the pawn leaders, like on a chessboard, changing, collating one or two. This is going to be a very, very different government. This is going to be a very, very different Nepal, which is confident, assertive, aspirant, and very, very conscious of their own identity.
Okay.
And as you saw, even during the oath taking, he presented a Nepal identity which is different from the so-called roti beti or civilizational continuity which we going talking about. Third point which I wish to make is that there is still a poor representation of the marginalized regions, particularly Tarai I am talking about, or Maresh I am talking about. Almost 42 to 45% of the elected people are from the Khas Arya community. And the representation of Madhes people in the cabinet is there, but relatively weaker representation. In fact, I hear that one of the Madhes members, Dr. Amresh Singh, at the last moment refused to join the cabinet because the portfolio he was given, he is, I think, 3 or 4 times a member of parliament. Portfolio he was given was a more weak, not an important one. So these are the issues which we must keep it in mind while dealing with this comment. But people have hopes, and let us hope that it does well.
Okay. 2 questions to you, Mr. Chaudhary. Thank you so much for joining me from Nepal. One, what happens to the older political parties and older leaders? And secondly, how do you ascribe to the rise of Balen Shah? Why did it happen? Why is he here? What made him acceptable to everyone?
Thank you, Karthik. Happy to be here. A big day for the country. We've seen the young Prime Minister, along with his cabinet, a very young cabinet, who was also sworn in. How I see is the government that has come into power. It's a culmination of year after year the political three-party cartelling that we've seen. That you've repeatedly seen the 3 parties coming in some permutation and combination every time. So, people were frustrated. They all needed a new face. And it led to a point when we saw the September Gen Z protest, where even we were affected. But, the call of the hour, the need of the hour was definitely a new face, a new leader. And that's how the election results also sort of panned out. It gave a triumph, a thumping majority to RSP. The mandate is clear. And coming to your question in terms of what will happen to the old party, this party that has come to power, they have 2/3 majority. And they've been given the mandate to really run the country. And based on their manifesto also, which I recall, was based on anti-corruption, complete reform of the legal network, legal framework, promoting economic reform, boosting economic activities, prioritizing private sector. So, these things definitely was something that is needed. And I feel that even for a group like ours, it's a welcome stand.
It's a welcome. It's a welcome stand. So, Ambassador Muni, my question to you is slightly more sociological right now. Why did Nepal go the Sri Lanka way and not the Bangladesh way? It restored the democratic order. It did not break the democratic order the way it has happened in Bangladesh. How did that happen?
See, in Sri Lanka, the transition took place by and large smoothly. See, they accepted the interim government, and then later when new elections and new leadership came up, which led the kind of a revolt against Rajapakshas and all that. So Sri Lanka was not so drastically different from what has happened in Nepal. In Bangladesh, the Yunus period was largely dictated by the Jamaat-e-Islami and some of the youth leaders. But now you see in the elections, all said and done, with all the protests and vigor which was shown during the throwing of Hasina regime, these forces have not won. The young leaders have not won, and Jamaat-e-Islami, all said and done, despite Islamic identity being asserted again and again, everywhere, including in Pakistan, the Jamaat-e-Islami is not a popular force, so to say. Therefore, they can continue to emphasize the identity of Islam or an identity of a particular type. People are really for different reasons and different agenda that they want to vote a government. In Nepal, the voting has taken place beyond these considerations. No religious considerations, no even fake. I remember that during Gen Z movement, the Gen Z leaders refused to even negotiate with the those who wanted to revive monarchy. And therefore, this is a different kind of a setup, though Balen has been very intelligent in the sense that when he was Kathmandu mayor, he did not emphasize his Madesh identity. When he started this election, he started from Janakpur and he emphasized his Madesh identity. But during the whole campaign, there was an effort to integrate different identities into one cosmetic whole. And I think he and Ravi Lamechan completely succeeded in sweeping the elections largely because of that. Absolutely. So you don't have that, a particular identity, a sectarian identity as in Bangladesh was being emphasized. And now you see the Tariq Rahman, who is now Prime Minister of Bangladesh, has very clearly came out 2 days back, remembering 1975 and saying
Absolutely.
that the Pakistani forces were 71 and 75, that Pakistani forces massacred the Bangladeshi people. So you see there are vibrations which are on a sympathetic syndrome.
Absolutely. Mr. Chaudhary, what are the economic challenges that Balen Shah needs to address, And in context of his ability to be in power, what are the dynamics he will need to mediate now? Because he's running a country. He's not running a smaller system, the experience he had. He's running Nepal.
Right. You see, like I earlier said, the finance minister, Dr. Sanim Wagle, moment he took charge, he immediately announced abolishment of old laws. And similarly, their focus is private sector. Their focus is to bring in investments. So, as far as their agenda, if it's centered around economic activities, and if it's centered around how they're going to refuel and bring Nepal out of the economic chaos, I think that is something that is in their first and foremost priority. And if that is a priority, like I said, even the private sector very well will support the cause.
And in a way, do you think that he will be able to carry and blend the both old and the new order? Because ultimately in politics, there is no vacuum and people just don't. Yeah, I'll come to you, Professor. I'll come to you. The older politicians may have lost the elections, but there will be other elections, Mr. Chaudhary, in Nepal. It's not going to be the last election, this election.
No, I'm sure, but let's give them a chance. Let's definitely give them a chance. Let's be positive. Let's be positive about what has happened to Nepal. Like I said, I'm equally positive as well. He's clearly spelled out what he intends to do. It's like I said, it's clearly defined in his manifesto. Today is just the first day, and in the first day itself, we can see so much action already taking place. So it's a wait and watch.
So, how's the mood like in Kathmandu? Is there exuberance?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I definitely feel that the wave of positivity is there. Okay, you see just positive things all over social media. We can actually see, the kind of decisions that you're taking. So, the whole environment is quite positive, to be honest.
Absolutely. Ambassador Muni, the question remains the same. Will he be able to carry both the new and the old order? Because there are, I think, 7 or 8 former prime ministers in Nepal. They are not going anywhere. They are still going to be part of the politics.
No, there are 2-3 things. I think the outgoing system will resist him. They would not like to see him succeed. You remember Mr. Oli did not even join the oath-taking ceremony. More than that, there are one or two other factors we should keep it in mind. The intent and commitment of this party is most welcome and very positive, as Mr. Chaudhary has said. There is absolutely